Than a rhinoceros. We're going to talk about that today. What are the big honking horns on its head? What makes it different than a rhinoceros? Where did it come from, and why does it have big padded feet? Let's talk about all that while we sketch this little monster. And let's turn the page and get started. I called it a little monster. It's not really a little monster. It's a big monster. I mean, but it's not big like moose big. It's big like rhinoceros big. You know, they're not too terrifying. They're like 6 feet tall, and at the shoulder, about 6 feet tall at the shoulder, and they had these two huge horns. They found them. They found them in Egypt, and they estimate them to be from about 30 million years ago. And they found them, like I said, they found them in Egypt, and named them after Queen Arsinoe. I don't know how to say it. I don't think anybody knows how to say it. She was the queen of Egypt some 2,500 years ago. And the paleontologist that discovered this thing said we should honor her. And I just think that's weird. And she'd been dead 2,000 years by the time he discovered this thing, and yet he still decided to name it after her. But she was the wife of Ptolemy II. So this thing is about 30 million years old, died off long before humans came along, and died off due to climate change. Some 30 million years ago, because the swamps in Africa dried up. It's a swamp critter. Ivy's in the chat. Good morning, Ivy. It's a swamp critter that had big padded feet so that it could walk through, and stalky legs so that it could walk through uh, soggy, boggy land and be able to pull its feet out of the mud. At least that's what they think the big padded feet were for. Every time they do that, they say, and this is what this was for. And all they can really say is, this is what modern animals with this feature use this feature for. But that doesn't mean that that's what that feature was for when it was encountered on this animal. This animal may have had a completely different environment. I doubt it. It probably still walked through the mud, and it probably still used those big padded feet and stocky little legs to keep its body from getting stuck in the mud. I just hate when the scientists say, and this is what it is, because it has to be this and it can't be anything else, because then they turn around and they're wrong. Because, when they found this thing in the 1905, they said it was rhinoceros, and they classified it with rhinoceros. They said it was in the rhinoceros clade, and they classified it with rhinoceros, and that science was settled until the 1970s, when somebody said, wait a minute, this thing is not rhinoceros, this is elephantine. Just like our manatees that we did yesterday. And so in the 1970s, they went back and they re-examined it, and sure enough, they decided that they were wrong. It was not a rhinoceros. The science was not settled. It was an elephant. It was in the elephant family. It split off from the elephants about 60 million years ago. But 60 million years ago, so long before the manatee split off, 60 million years ago, this was in the same family as elephants. Until the next discovery comes along, and they find out that was wrong too. This is the kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that paleontologists pound the table over. This has to be this. This can't be anything else. No, this is the kind of stuff that just gets their blood boiling. I can't believe you would suggest that this feature, which is obviously. Anyway, it's crazy. These horns are hollow, and they are bone. And the males show scarring around them, which suggests that the males used them for, at the very least, mating displays and fighting. At the very least. We don't know if they were used for defense. I'm sure if they were used for fighting, for mating, then they were probably used for defense. But you know how nerds are. Nerds are always like, it's got to be sex. Of course, it has to be sex because you're the nerd. That's what nerds say. Trust me, I'm a nerd. That's what I think. It's got to be sex. My mother, or Ivy says, I'm sorry, my Ivy says, I envision paleontologists as rather stuffy and unlikable people at this point. Right? They're probably lovely people, Ivy. They're they're probably quite lovely people. I know a couple of geologists that are also paleontologists, and they're they're lovely people as long as you don't question their yeah, they're just passionate about their the study of paleontology is really the study of comparative evolution. And what they really want to know is, they're really trying to study how these features developed, and they want to know how they developed. They want to know why what the purpose was. They want to know all that stuff. And the modern thinking is that if you knew how it arose in the past, you can identify it and see how it can benefit us currently. If you know if you can classify things quickly, then you can say this is why this is toxic. This is where this toxicity comes from. This is where this venom comes from. That's the excuse. I don't think that's what they really do. I really think they just like playing with old things because the old things don't talk back. When they look at the old thing and they say, "Yeah, you must have been an iguana," the thing doesn't look back and say, "No." One of these days, somebody like Jack Horner is going to stumble across one of my shows, and he's going to send me a hateful email, a cease and desist. He's going to send me a cease and desist. Hey, just Joe. You guys are up bright and early this morning. This time change must have us all bitten. I was telling my mom before the show that normally I wake up about 4:30, and I lay there and I toss and I turn and I try to go back to sleep. And the beauty of time change is that now I can do it at 3:30. Can't talk. Farting. I can't. I can't seem to make my. I can't seem to make my pencils work and my brain work at the same time. I know that's crazy. But the part of my brain that communicates, the the part of my brain responsible for communication shuts down while I'm trying to stay within the lines. Hey, my camera's not changing. Yeah, it is. Why isn't my music playing then? Ah, I hate when that happens. I've got to figure out my music. It's awfully quiet in here. Yes, yes, Joe, time changed. Hey, that means that the time is back in line for Elizabeth and Claudia, too. You can hear the music? Oh, she's saying the camera's changing, but the music's not changing. I've got to figure out my music. Ivy's got some really cool music, and I think didn't just Joe make it for her? I might be wrong on that. Yeah, I'll have to figure that out. You guys only hear half the conversation. My mom sees a dog's head when you turn the drawing sideways. She's telling me how she sees a dog's head, and now she, now it's all she can see. I'm not going to try and draw all the individual teeth, especially since they're tiny. But I think that's all the detail I want to do. My chair broke yesterday. My chair that I sit in every day. A couple of days ago, the little ring around the bottom snapped off. It was the welds snapped off of it, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to get a new chair. But I thought, I could get a little life out of it. But without the rings around the bottom, the uh, the legs were no longer supported, and one of the legs splayed out on me yesterday and tumped me out onto the ground. Luckily, I did not hit my head or die, but I had to go find a different chair within the house for this morning, and the chair that I'm in now is about a foot taller, and so I'm a giant. I'm gotta reach down here and draw like this. Yeah, Ivy's in the chat saying yes. Joe made the groovy music for her channel, and it is really groovy music. Joe, this is a good job. Really groovy. She's got her own theme, so coloring with Ivy. Got a got a sad song in memoriam of the kitty that passed away. Really groovy stuff. He put it on his channel. If you're watching his gaming with just Joe, he put it on his channel as a playlist. You can go listen to it. It's fantastic stuff. So I got a new chair coming. We hadn't hardly ever even talked about these things. These things are about 3,000 pounds. This Arsinoitherium. That's back to our Arsinoitherium. They're about 3,000 pounds, about 6 foot tall, rhinoceros sized. That's about that's about 1,000. That's about that's about 1,000 deep sea isopods. But if you were to stack 1,000 DC isopods, deep sea isopods up like that, they wouldn't much like it. But they're rhinoceros-sized. They've got this tiny set of horns behind there. I missed one of them. They've got this tiny set of horns behind it, and it's all bone. And they think that the horns were covered with is it keratin? They think that the bones had kind of a skin over them, that the horns had kind of a skin over them. My mother is laughing at me. In my uh about 8 bananas tall. Ivy. Ivy's in the chat asking how many bananas tall is that? It's about 8 bananas tall. With the average banana being 8 inches. They were descendants from elephants, but they were not related to rhinos at all. They thought that they were. They were initially classified as rhinos because of the horns. The original paleontologists. So the original paleontologist classified in 1905 classified them as classified it in the rhinoceros family, the rhinoceros clade, and in the 70s they discovered that was not accurate. So in the 70s they went back and re-examined it and decided that it was not that, it was in the elephant clade, but it had split from elephants 60 million years ago and then died off 30 million years ago. But initially it was the first guy that found it said, yes, this is obviously rhinoceros. And textbooks are slow to change. There were textbooks. I went to elementary school in the 70s, and the textbooks in the 70s said that dinosaurs were cold-blooded. Dinosaurs were uh, had their feet sticking out, splayed out to the side. That they had to live in marshes because they couldn't possibly support their own weight. And this was all considered fact in the 70s, and this was in our textbooks. Except that uh, actual science had already advanced past that. The actual science had already decided in the 60s that none of that was accurate, and had already moved past that. But the textbooks hadn't changed yet. So the textbooks are slow to change, especially children's books. That makes it tough on people like my kids who want to know everything about all of this stuff, and then everything they learn they find out is inaccurate, and it gets so upset. Can't, like I said, can't talk arting. And I'm way up here where every time I move, my perspective changes on this thing. Way up here. I know I'm gonna find a lot of this stuff. The perspective is gonna be off because of how much I've moved around, trying to maintain my balance in my tall chair. Why is that not dark? There we go. I need that darker. Why is that not dark? All right, let's do this. Let's do this shadow on the ground. But yeah, the real beauty of time change is that Claudia and Elizabeth will be back on their lunchtime. We'll have we'll get to have fun with them again. It won't be it won't be too early for them to play with us. The whole world will be put back to normal. I think that's about all of that I want to do. I love this part. I could sit here and do this part all day, but it is already 5:53 and we need to dry that and add color. So let's get the hair dryer going. Joe, Joe, if you were to imagine us having horns, would you imagine us having horns sticking out the front of our head like Hellboy? Or would you imagine us having horns like uh, the Satan in Legend, where they're the huge horns sticking out the side of his head, the huge longhorn cattle type horns sticking out the side of his head? What what would you imagine? How would you imagine human horns would be? Would they stick out the side like longhorn cattle? Would they stick out the front like what other kind of animal has the horns to stick out the front? Not tusks, but horns. I can't think of an animal that has that besides Hellboy. A ram? Yeah, like a ram. Would they be would they be facial horns like one of these things? If humans if humans had horns, where would their horns be? How would they be oriented? Joe's in the chat saying, imagine if we had horns. You think we'd decorate them? You think we'd tie things to them? And you think we'd decorate them? You think we'd tie stuff to them and walk around with decorations on them? Yeah, or would they flow back like an ibis? That's another option. Like a shaka, except a horn, not a tail, not a head tail. Ivy says her hoodie would probably need to be altered to accommodate them. You know, we already have to accommodate your hoodie for your halo, Ivy. Let me dry this. I've got a few more details I want to add to it before we do the final inking. I can see guys with really thick necks, with great big longhorn cattle type horns, like in Legend with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. I can see guys big, really thick necks walking around with their horns just kind of prancing into a room, and all the rest of us looking over at him and snickering and saying, "Yeah, he's compensating for something." I can imagine all the things we would say about people with big horns, and secretly we'd all want big horns. I want big horns. There's some texture that didn't really come across that I want to make sure I capture. And then I lean over to draw, and my big old head comes down over the camera. 6 o'clock. I have got to get a handle on this. I'll be starting a new day job soon, and I won't be able to run long like this. Can't talk. Harding. Did we miss anything? Swamp feet. They were found. They were found amongst the crocodiles and whale ancestors. Is the other reason they think they were swamp animals. a pretty good reason to think they were swamped. There's only about 50 specimens. They have about 50 almost complete or complete skeletons. So we don't really know how successful they were. We can speculate how many there were based on herding animals today. We can speculate that it was a herding animal. But it's all speculation because there's only 50 specimens. And there's no you can't just look in and say, well, how many incomplete specimens do they have of individual animals? Because they don't document that. They just say, well, we have all these thousands of specimens over here that have yet to be documented, but we have 50 almost complete animals. So we know we have at least 50 individuals. My chat is disconnected. Please wait while we try to reconnect you. Well, I hope that happens soon, because that's my lifeblood to my Ivy and my... There we go. I don't know what happened to my chat, but it disconnected. Anyway, so let's see. We need to sign this. So they had 50 specimens. We don't have any idea how many there actually were, what their success was. Just that they existed and that there were at least 50 of them. Now there's music. What in the world? Let's see. Today is the 2nd of November. I'd be sending out postcards. Ivy says she's going to look spiffy reading all your books. I tell you what I did yesterday, Ivy, is I spent about an hour translating all of my descriptions and stuff into about 16 other languages, so that they would be accessible to other parts of the country, other parts of the world rather. So let's see here. Is that the one? That's the one. There's my sketch based on the photograph, which is probably more accurate than my sketch based on the real life from my perspective. Let me turn this microphone off and take it off of my shirt so I don't walk around with it all day, because that's really creepy. People think you're recording them. And then I can stop this recording and eject here. Thanks, Joe. Take this camera down. Let's see. Let's see what it looks like from my perspective. Rawr. That's Dinosaur for I Love You. So there it is from my perspective. So that's what I did today. Tomorrow, excuse me, tomorrow we have an egg pulled out of here. What could it be? Whatever could it be? My camera's off because I'm a foot taller than I'm supposed to be. Whatever could it be? The suspense is what drives us all. That is the plan, Ivy, is to work in the book today. It is, oh my goodness, it is a finless porpoise. And apparently a noseless porpoise. It is a finless porpoise. See, there's no dorsal fin. A finless porpoise. That'd be fun to drive. We've kind of had a series of sea life that looks like a potato or a torpedo. We have a seal. We had the manatee the other day. Now we have a finless porpoise. Anyway, This is what we're intended to do Monday, November 3rd. So if you're watching this Monday, November 3rd, and it's before 5:30 in the morning, then you're watching the trailer, and this is what we're about to draw. So stick around, we'll get right on it. But for the rest of us, oh, thanks, Ivy. It is my intention to work on the book today. This afternoon, about 2 o'clock, Chicago time, Texas time. We're going to fire up the cameras, and we're going to continue working on. I think we finished with Madame Sonfree's design. I don't think we need to do much more with her, and so I think we're going to dive into Della today. We'll start about 2 o'clock. So that is my intention today. Right now, it is time for me to go get my apple fritter. I thank you guys so much for joining me. I do look forward to this every morning when I get to art with my besties. It keeps me accountable to my art practice, and sometimes it's the only art I get to do. So be sure and tune in tomorrow, same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel, and we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing, because that gives you a chance to click the clicky thingies on the horizontal, which will lead you to another video that you might like, or to another video in this series if you like to learn about wacky stuff and watch people draw it. Also, if you're on the horizontal, it's this way. Yeah. So click the clicky thingies. But it also gives me a chance to make sure that the lag is caught up to the stream and I don't get cut off mid-sentence. Gives everybody in the chat a chance to ask me a question and see if I can answer it.